Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. This is the Bethesda Minor Master Plan Amendment Summer Toolbox Open House. We're going to get started. I'm sure a few other people will filter in while we're doing our introductions. My name is Atara Margulies, and I'm a master planner in the Down County Division. And before I introduce our main presenter, I'm just going to go over a few housekeeping rules. I know we've all been in many virtual meetings by now, but it's always good to just refresh the rules of the game. So I'm the person who emailed everyone the link today. So if anyone gets kicked out or has trouble or can't hear us or is having other technical issues, just respond to that email and I'll get it, and hopefully I can help get you back in. Keep yourself on mute during the presentation. The bar should be at the top, depending on how you're looking at Teams, but I think we all know how to mute ourselves by now. So just make sure you are on mute while Elza is presenting. There will be a question and answer session at the end of the presentation. So there's two ways to ask questions. At the end of the presentation, you can raise your hand. There's a bar at the top. It has a little hand signal, and you can click that, and then we can see, and one of us will call on you. Or you can put a question in the chat by opening the chat box, which has a conversation bubble icon, again, at that toolbar at the top. Staff, there's a lot of staff on this call, and we'll be monitoring the chat, looking for questions about this project and holding those until the Q&A, so you can feel comfortable to ask either way, and we will get to your question. This session is also being recorded, and it will be posted on the plan website within a few days after this meeting. And so that's it. Without further ado, I give it over to Elza Heisel-McCoy, who's the chief of our Down County Planning Division and the leader of this project.
Great, Atara, thanks so much. And it's good to see everybody. Thanks for participating on a Wednesday evening. As Atara said, my name's Elza Heisel-McCoy. I am the chief of the Down County Planning Team. We do planning, master planning and review development applications for the portion of Montgomery County inside the Capital Beltway. And we're here tonight to talk about the Bethesda Downtown Plan Minor Master Plan Amendment. I have two presentations, sort of a cartoon and then the main event to go through. But before I do that, I will ask my team. We have a lot of team members from various disciplines participating, and I'll ask them to introduce themselves and state their expertise. Let's start with yes, Grace. Thank you.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name's Grace, and I'm a regulatory reviewer within Down County, so I focus on the new development applications within downtown Bethesda, and I also facilitate the Bethesda Design Advisory Panel.
Hey, Sue.
Hi, I'm Sue. I'm the Adequate Public Facilities Planner in the Countywide Planning and Policy Division, and I'm in charge of the schools part.
Great. Lisa?
I'm Lisa Gavoni. I'm the housing planner in Countywide Planning and Policy, and I'm responsible for the housing recommendations.
Darcy.
Hi, Darcy Buckley with Countywide. I have expertise in transportation and growth policy.
Stephanie?
Stephanie Dickel. I'm the regulatory supervisor for Down County, and so we review the development applications within that division. Thank you.
And then I see Henry.
There we go. Hi, everybody. I'm Henry Coppola. I'm the Parks Department's Long Range Planning Supervisor.
Anybody I missed from Parks or Planning staff? Okay, great. Then let me go ahead and share my screen and we'll get started. Can everybody see this?
Yes.
Excellent. So as I said at the top, this is sort of the cartoon. This is the introductory presentation that we've been doing at each of the public meetings. And it's a way to introduce the Minor Master Plan Amendment and to invite everybody to participate. There we go. So Downtown Bethesda is a thriving urban center, an economic engine for the county, and one of the county's most desirable communities. It's home to over 17,000 residents in a diversity of housing types, over 33,000 jobs, including the county's two largest employers, NIH and Marriott. It is home to parks, restaurants, shops, art galleries, the performing arts, live music, movies, has excellent transit, bike lanes, and sidewalks. So the 2017 Bethesda Downtown Plan was a 4-year collaboration between residents, property owners, staff, planning board, and county council to develop a 20-year vision of sustainability, accessibility, equity, and innovation. So the goals were affordable housing near jobs, shopping, and recreation, safe tree-lined sidewalks, bikeways, and streets, and new parks and open spaces. Since the plan was approved in 2017, the planning board has approved over 7 million square feet of development, about 3 million of which has been built. So that includes 1.25 million square feet of office of the 1.6 million approved, 320,000 square feet of retail of the 410,000 square feet approved, 2,800 residential units built or under construction of the 4,800 approved, and over 400 moderately priced dwelling units, which is the county's primary affordable housing program that are built or under construction of the over 750 which have been approved. Since 2017, the Parks Department has been making progress on implementing the parks recommended in the plans in the Civic Greens, the Eastern Greenway, and parks along Montgomery Avenue. There have been new bikeways and pedestrian improvements that have been built, and traffic and schools are operating within standards. So what are we talking about? So the 2017 plan capped total development in the plan area at 32.4 million square feet. And that number was based on a transportation infrastructure capacity assessment that was done in 2016 as the plan was being developed. The plan also recommends that when total development reaches 30.4 million square feet, that there be a check-in, that the planners go back and see if there are things that we could be doing better. So since 2017, many new buildings have been completed, but not as many new public amenities. There have been over $15 million in park impact payments, but no new parks complete to date. So that check-in is the Bethesda Minor Master Plan Amendment. So a minor master plan amendment goes through the same master plan process that's required by law as a full-blown master plan. And you can see here, it starts with a work program, which was approved by the planning board last month. And then we do analysis. We present recommendations to the community and the planning board. The plan then moves on to county council, and county council has the final approval authority for this minor master plan amendment. So the scope of work that the planning board approved sets the same plan area as the Bethesda downtown plans shown here on your right, which focusing on downtown, but then going out to areas closer to the existing single-family neighborhoods. The minor master plan amendment is focusing solely on implementing current recommendations. So there are no changes to specific zoning, parks, or other recommendations. The vision that's in the plan is the vision that we are looking at how to implement better. Implementation areas to explore include economic development, park development, transportation improvement, schools, affordable housing, and a community recreation center. So some questions to consider. These, again, are questions that we've been sharing with the community for several months. We shared with the planning board. The first is a development cap necessary in downtown Bethesda? If so, does it need to be raised? And are there alternative approaches that would work better? Second, how do we ensure that public infrastructure can support future growth? Next, what are the top priority public improvements recommended in the plan? And what does the minor master plan need to do to provide additional incentive to realize those top priority public improvements? Is the park implementation strategy in the 2017 plan still the right one? And could any of the current implementation recommendations be modified to better achieve the goals of the plan? So as we move forward, tonight, we're going to talk about, in general terms, how master plan visions are implemented. Next month, we will be coming back to you in virtual and in-person events to share staff's initial thoughts and preliminary recommendations, and they will be specifically to answer these questions. So the schedule, the scope of work was approved at the planning board in June. We're doing public workshops over the summer to talk about how master plan visions are implemented. In September, we're expecting to present preliminary recommendations to the community and the planning board. Present a draft plan amendment to the planning board and the community in October. Have a planning board public hearing in November. Have planning board work sessions and the planning board draft of the plan to the county council by roughly the end of the year, and then looking to the county council to have their public hearing and review early in 2025. Okay, then how to stay connected and involved. This is the plan website. The website has an e-letter. If you aren't already signed up, we strongly encourage you to sign up for that. We only send out things when something's going on, because this amendment is very narrowly scoped, is very technical. We're on a much shorter time frame than we would be for a brand new master plan. So the e-letter is a great way to stay in touch. And then my contact information is here, and all of this is on the website. Okay. So having dispensed with the cartoon, we have a lot of information to share. So rather than letting you go out to the lobby to buy yourself a treat, we are going to jump right in to the main event. Okay, so how are master plan visions built? So in this presentation, we're going to talk about how plans are a public-private partnership. There are checks and balances in terms of master plan adequacy, how the vision of the master plan is built. We're going to take a little bit of a deeper dive into some specific areas, and then we'll talk about what's coming up next. Okay, plans are a public-private partnership. As I mentioned already, master plans are the result of an extensive public process. They are the master plans generate a 20-year vision. Public and private participation is essential to the creation of that vision, and public and private participation are essential to the implementation of that vision. And the visions of the plan strive to balance growth, infrastructure, and amenities in a plan area. Checks and balance, master plan adequacy. So every master plan process includes an assessment of how the transportation network supporting the plan area will accommodate anticipated new development. The current approach to this includes 5 metrics, 5 particular tests that are done that look at how improvement and how people can and do get to work, shop, and play in their community and beyond by walking, biking, driving, and taking transit. Once we have the vision, how is it built? Private development and public investment are the main tools. And it's important to remember and recognize that overall economic health and the real estate development market and capital budget will determine the pace. So there has been, as we saw earlier, there's been a lot of development. There's been a lot of density development that's been approved by the planning board. Only half of what has been approved has actually been built. And this, there's a lot of economic, there was a lot of pent-up demand in 2017. There were a lot of projects that came in and got their approvals. There were a lot of projects that were built early on as with the pandemic and other sort of economic conditions have slowed down the real estate development market. There have been fewer development applications, and we're seeing continued construction, but the construction that you're seeing in Bethesda now are projects that were approved since the plan was adopted. So the tools for building are their indirect and direct tools. Those are the two main groups. On the indirect side, these are more general tools. So they consist primarily of taxes. So development impact taxes for transportation and school improvements, and then property, business, income, sales, and other taxes that come from the development process, from the new buildings, from the residents that fund capital improvements more generally. Direct tools are project specific and typically come or primarily come from private development, but also on the public side come through the capital budget and the capital improvement program, all of which we'll talk about more in just a moment. So private development implements master plan recommended improvements in a number of ways. The first is through the Adequate Public Facilities Assessment, or the APF. So the APF policy is set in the Growth and Infrastructure Policy, which is updated every 4 years. The most current update was just recently transmitted to Council, so Council will be discussing that update soon. But the Adequate Public Facilities Assessment, the Planning Board has to find that every development application, that public facilities in the area around that development are adequate to serve that development. So that's transportation and schools are the main ones, but also if there need to be water and sewer or other types of upgrades, those would be done through the Adequate Public Facilities Review. Also, master plans have specific improvements that are recommended. So when a property develops that has a specific recommendation for a particular improvement in it, then when that property redevelops, developers make those improvements. So this is a through block connection at the Marriott headquarters in Bethesda, and through block connections are the types of improvements that master plans recommend to particularly for longer blocks or deeper blocks, make it easier for pedestrians to get from street to street. Private development also provides affordable housing. So the moderately priced dwelling unit program, and we'll talk a little bit more about this later. The county does not build affordable housing, so the new affordable housing that comes in is a percent requirement for new housing development. So it is private development that's building new affordable housing in the county. And then there are also public-private partnerships where the county government can leverage ownership of property. This is most often redevelopment of county parking lots, county parking garages to include within a private development, a public component. So this image is the new Silver Spring Recreation Center that was done with an affordable housing partner and a property owner in downtown Silver Spring. On the public side, master plan recommendations are built through the capital budget and the capital improvements program. So the capital budget, and this is where the indirect tools, this is where the taxes come in, those go into a general pot. And within the capital budget, there's a list of public infrastructure improvements that the county is going to build directly. And this can include things like schools, sometimes street improvements and maintenance. This is the way parks are built, other public improvements that are built with public dollars. And we'll speak a little bit more about this shortly. The capital improvement program looks out 6 years and is updated every 2 years. So now we're going to focus on some of the key areas. So first, we're going to start with parks. So how are parks created? First, new public parks are recommended in a master plan. The Bethesda Downtown Plan recommended 9 new parks. Since the plans are done sort of every 20 years, it is planners take the opportunity to be aspirational and recommend as many parks as possible, as potentially feasible. Having the recommendation in the plan gives the public agencies, including the planning board, the leverage they need to get new public parks. So if they're not in the master plan, they can be much more difficult to get. So on the private side, parks are created as a result of private development. As part of a new development, the developer may design a new park with parks to park standards and with parks oversight, and or build the park, and or dedicate park land to parks for public access. And this is and or because every situation is going to be a little bit different. The image on the right is of a portion of the Eastern Greenway on the east side of Wisconsin Avenue that will be built as part of a private development. On the public side, parks can be created with public investment. The Parks Department uses capital budget funds or other funding sources to purchase and develop property into a park. So the image on the right is Montgomery Avenue in Bethesda, and shows 2 properties that the Parks Department recently purchased. The master plan recommends new parks between Montgomery Avenue and the Purple Line, and the Parks Department used funds other than the park impact payment, which we'll talk about in just a moment, to purchase those properties. So there are additional tools which are at least in Down County, unique to 2 particular areas. So in downtown Bethesda, the plan recommends and the zoning ordinance requires a park impact payment for developers who want to purchase additional density beyond which they have the master plans recommend. There's a zoning map, and the master plan recommends for each property a particular zone. In Bethesda, you can buy density above and beyond the density that's mapped to the site, and that is made through a park impact payment. And those funds are used to acquire parkland and make park improvements in downtown Bethesda. In Bethesda and Silver Spring, there's also another way where the zoning ordinance requires properties to provide public open space, and rather than have a lot of small areas of open space, sometimes called postage stamp, the master plan said for both of those areas let's focus on the parks that are recommended in the master plan. And if I'm developing a property that is not recommended for a park, rather than provide that small area of public open space, I would pay into a fund to help acquire park space or to build new parks. Okay, focusing on transportation. And again, this is being recorded. There's a PDF version of this presentation already online. There's a lot of information. So transportation improvements, there are a lot of things that fall within under the umbrella of transportation improvements. So on the image on the right of Woodmont Avenue in Bethesda, basically everything you see between the buildings is a transportation improvement. So bike lanes, crosswalks, new sidewalks, accessibility ramps, through block connections, and then in Bethesda, including the Purple Line station and the Bethesda Metro Station south entrance, and the Capitol Crescent Trail Tunnel under Wisconsin Avenue. So a lot of things are included in the category of transportation improvements. Who makes these improvements? Largely on the private side, developers will construct new sidewalks, bike lanes, etc., along the edges of their site. These are called frontages or frontage improvements. These include street trees, street lights, expanded sidewalks, crosswalks, undergrounding of overhead utilities, and more. Also on the private side, as part of development review, as part of the adequate public facilities review, there's what's called a local area transportation review, where the area around the development site is analyzed for deficiencies in crosswalks, bike networks, accessibility, pedestrian links, and in addition to the frontage improvements that are required for every project, depending on the expected impact, the transportation impact of that development, developers will make other offsite improvements. This image on the right is a very recent one from a project in downtown Silver Spring, and shows all of the different types of improvements that a developer will be making as part of that local area transportation review. Sometimes the developers will build the improvement themselves. Otherwise, or other times they will pay a fee in lieu, give money to the Department of Transportation for that improvement. On the public side, we come back to transportation improvements being made through the capital improvement program. These can be specific master plan improvements, like bikeways, transit improvements. The Silver Spring plan recommended a bridge over the train tracks. In downtown Bethesda, the Bethesda streetscape, the particular brick pattern, on Woodmont Avenue in particular, there was a capital improvement program project to make those improvements in downtown Bethesda. So those were done through public investment. And there are also capital improvement program projects that address more general county-wide improvements like lighting, crosswalks, and accessibility. Focusing on schools. How are schools built and improved? On the private side, we have the school impact tax. So developers are required to pay a school impact tax for a new residential development, and they pay a particular rate for every new residential unit. In areas of the county, which at this point is not Bethesda, where the schools are overutilized, developers will make an additional payment called a utilization premium payment for residential projects in those overutilized school service areas. In other parts of the county, this hasn't happened as much in Down County. For redevelopment of larger sites, private developers could be required to dedicate land or funding for a new school site if the master plan recommended one on that land. So as part of the overall redevelopment, they may dedicate land or provide funding. On the public side, Montgomery County Public Schools certainly has their capital budget and their capital improvement program. So that's how they pay for schools. Impact taxes and utilization premium payments for school capital projects can pay to add capacity, which can be a new school or an addition, or a modernization to an existing school to add classroom space. The utilization premium payments are now required to be used for capital projects that add capacity in order to alleviate the overutilization in that particular school service area. Focusing on affordable housing. Who builds affordable housing? As I said earlier, it's built primarily by private development. County law requires at least 12.5% of new residential units for developments above a certain size. B, moderately priced dwelling units or MPDUs in Bethesda and Silver Spring. That percentage is 15%. And developers can get additional density and height for providing affordable housing beyond this basic requirement. Additionally, private developers through public-private partnerships can partner with affordable housing providers like the Housing Opportunities Commission or MHP to build affordable housing in the county. The image on the right is an affordable senior housing development in Silver Spring along the Purple Line by the Silver Spring Library. On the public side, public-private partnerships leverage county-owned land to provide affordable housing, that there may be a higher percentage of affordable housing, or that so that there will be just more units generally. But it may also be affordable units that have a deeper affordability, so are affordable to folks with lower incomes, or maybe they have a higher bedroom count. The Department of Housing and Community Affairs regulates the affordable housing program, but does not itself build affordable housing. I think this is the last one, focusing on the recreation center. So recreation centers are built on the private side, primarily through public-private partnerships with the county Department of General Services, the Department of Recreation. On the right is an image from the DGS website explaining the process. So the Silver Spring Aquatic Center that I showed earlier was such a project. But recreation centers can also be built as part of a private development as an amenity if it's recommended in the master plan and then dedicated to the county. So this is the Wisconsin Place development in Friendship Heights. And then on the backside on Friendship Boulevard, I think there's a smaller rec center that was built as part of that project. On the public side, of course, the county can use capital budget or other funding sources to purchase and develop property into a rec center. I mentioned earlier that the general health of the economy and the real estate development market, the cost of construction, the cost of acquiring land, it can take a lot of time to put together a development, whether it's a private development or a public project, a lot of money and a lot of time to acquire the land, do the design, get all the necessary permits, and then do the construction. So while the county or the Parks Department can do it on their own, having private developers contribute land or money makes the process sometimes work much better. Okay, so takeaways from all of this. Master plans address many interconnected pieces of the built environment. The implementation of the visions of master plan requires many partners and many tools. The tools that we've gone through at sort of a high level. Plan visions are for 20 years, but they are built project by project, and that markets guide the pace of development and public investment. So their master plans don't have a schedule to say we're going to have this much density done in this date and that date and that date. They are set up for the market to set that pace. And the minor master plan amendment is looking at ways to make the tools that we have work better for downtown Bethesda. Okay, that's a lot of information. The preliminary recommendations, as I mentioned, are coming up in September. Again, how to stay connected. I'm going to stop sharing, and we're open. We have all the staff that you heard. We're happy to answer any questions.
Yes, Henry. Go ahead.
Hi, I had a question to consider on behalf of an organization that I represent that relates to your framing question of is the development cap necessary for downtown Bethesda? And our hope is that you consider this question as you develop the preliminary recommendations. So my name is Henry Crossman. I'm attending as a representative of St. John's Episcopal Church, which you may know is at the corner of Bradley and Wisconsin. It's been there for 150 years and has a parish of about 1,000 community members. Our question to you all is whether the county will consider, as part of this amendment process, either creating a carve-out for public facilities, faith communities, and institutions within the existing cap structure, or eliminating the cap structure and replacing it with some other mechanisms to control development and require financial support from the developers. If I may, a couple of reasons why we're asking this of your group is that planning areas and communities are made up of more than just existing and planned commercial and residential development. And the plan itself inherently recognizes this as it ensures that parks and open spaces, the affordable housing, as well as environmental innovation and enhanced transportation infrastructure are priorities and not afterthoughts as Bethesda develops. But to these factors listed in the plan, I'd like to propose that institutions, art centers, public facilities, and yes, houses of worship are also integral to what makes a complete community, what gives it life and energy and makes it home as we develop. However, these institutions and organizations which occupy the space between these major commercial and residential developments and the parks, environment, transportation initiatives may often be overlooked in the planning process. And that's what brings us to the question that we'd like to bring before you about the cap. The cap's unique to Bethesda versus the rest of the county. And once it's reached, these community supporting organizations that I've mentioned can no longer add additional square footage to their properties. And practically speaking, that impacts us because we can't add accessible enclosed entrances or additional space to accommodate a growing community or rebuild our aging facilities. And so we support and understand the concept of developers having to contribute to the roads, the schools, and the parks when they develop. And in this way, they're contributing to the infrastructure and not burdening it. But from our position, we believe there might be a better way to control major commercial and residential development than this cap structure, which hurts and limits these other community supporting organizations. And so briefly, that's why we're asking the county to consider as part of this process, either creating a carve out for public facilities, faith communities, and institutions within the cap structure, or eliminating the cap structure and using other mechanisms to control development and require financial support from developers. So that's our question that we hope that you consider. And thank you for the overview and for listening to the community as part of this process.
Sure, Henry, thanks and I think we've heard from other folks from the church. And yeah, I think we hear that comment. I think we're definitely taking into account, trying to think, looking for the next, so we're 7 years, looking for the next dozen or so years of the plan. I think we absolutely want to make sure that our civic institutions, our faith-based community, but also other civic cultural institutions have the flexibility that they need. So we're absolutely taking that into account. And we'll have something for you to think about and respond to next month.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We also have a comment. We have a question in the chat that is, are there any new rec centers such as the Wheaton Community Center are there any new rec centers like the Wheaton Community Center proposed in the Bethesda plan area?
So the Bethesda downtown plan recommends a new recreation center. The Lawton Center in the town of Chevy Chase is a rec center. It's a county rec center. It is small, but I think it offers. I think it's well used. So I think but the plan does recommend, and we've heard from a number of residents that a new, more modern facility, as recommended in the plan, is desirable in Bethesda. So we're definitely looking at ways to help make that happen. Any other questions? It's a lot of information. Yes, I'm happy to explain. So is there a particular element of the park impact program? Henry, do you want to talk about how the money is collected and used?
Sure. Let me move back to a slightly better lit spot.
So,
No, not a problem. And so more on the PIP program. I'll try and give a little bit of general more on it, and then you can let me know if I've gotten to that or not. So the PIP program, like Elsa gave in the sort of brief intro to it, is basically a payment that helps unlock additional density. And there's a formula and a calculation and a rate for each project that's approved that then has a PIP. We often say PIP payment, but technically that's a redundancy, like a PIN number. There's a timing trigger for when the PIP has to be submitted and paid to the commission, and within that time frame, I think it's it's at the first above ground building permit, and it's a 2-year window from when the plan's approved. And the check's then deposited by the developer who's doing that project, and it comes in and is put into a special PIP account, which is managed as part of our capital improvements program every year. And I think we touched on it in here, but we've got about I think it's about $15 million have been collected in PIPs so far. A little bit more than that has been approved. So there's some where projects have been approved to make a PIP but haven't reached their trigger yet. And then when the money comes in, we are able to use it on land acquisition, all projects within the Bethesda downtown plan area for park improvements and park recommendations from the plan. So acquiring new property, design and work on improvements for brand new parks, but also for existing parks are the major ways that it gets spent. There's been a little bit of use for it for some property acquisition and some attendant costs, and there is currently some being used and earmarked for some project design and then construction that's coming up. Let me know if that gets to what you were looking for or not. Otherwise, I'll just keep rambling.
The only thing that I would add is that at the time the sector plan was approved, the planning board and council set the rate at $10 per square foot, but then set up a provision for it to be updated by inflation every other year. So I want to say the number is $12.33. Grace, is that the right number?
Close, $12.49.
Thanks, Grace. And Elsa.
Thank you. Any other questions while we have folks here? So I'll say that we're doing this is the second workshop that we've done, and we're doing an in-person the same presentation this Saturday starting at 11 o'clock at the town of Chevy Chase Town Hall, and then as I said before, we are working on getting the dates for the preliminary recommendation meetings, and we'll have those sent out to everybody when we have them. Looks like we have some more questions in the chat.
We do. We have a question that says, when high-rise developments are reviewed, is the impact on natural daylight considered? And noting that Woodmont seems to be could be a sunless wind tunnel.
So I think the planning board has to find that new development is compatible with existing and recommended development in the area. the, downtown Bethesda is urbanizing. And so while, the additional building height and density that was allowed in the plan allows particularly the upper stories of a building to be sculpted to allow better access to light and air. There isn't a specific sort of, a daylight standard, but I will let Grace talk a little bit about the design advisory panel in Bethesda and the kind of things that they're looking at when they review sort of what the design advisory panel is, and what they look at.
Thanks. So the Bethesda Design Advisory Panel is made up of a registered architect, a representative from the Bethesda community, a landscape architect, a representative of the development community, and a sort of representative from the educational field that also is focused in architecture, urban design, and landscape. And essentially what the panel does, it reviews all the new incoming projects within downtown Bethesda in accordance with the Bethesda design guidelines. So when we're talking about these new big buildings, the design guidelines went through a really exhaustive process to determine what the exact design we wanted there and how can we reduce the bulk of these new developments. And so there are a lot of guidelines depending on where you're within Bethesda. It's sort of broken down by street types, like a downtown boulevard or a neighborhood connector, residential street, things like that, that talk about a base, a middle, and a top for each of the buildings based on what should the base be, a couple stories, the middle, how do you define the top? It also talks about tower step back. So when we're approving one building next to another, the Bethesda design guidelines recommend that tower step backs are provided between the property lines so we can allow that light and air in. But to get to the point of your question, sometimes we do request sun studies to aid in our review of the development applications, and the panel does review those. But as Elsa mentioned, it is becoming an urbanizing area, and that is, we can understand the wind tunnel feeling. Does that answer your question?
I'm gonna,
Yes, thank you.
thanks. And then there's also a follow-up question about the PIP in the chat. It says, is it a builder who needs to request a PIP, and are they required for remodeling? Also a request for for contact info more about the program, which we can add to the chat.
Sure. So the park impact payment. So there's a lot of information in the presentation, but it's at a very high level. There's, we could spend days talking about all the different things that we look at. So development, there are two types of development processes in the county. There's what's called a standard method, which is often referred to in other places as by right. So it's things that you follow the standards in the zoning ordinance, and you can get a building permit. So typically new single family homes, if they're on a recorded lot, you wouldn't really necessarily come through the planning department for a remodel. So for the other is the optional method, which is taller buildings, more density, sort of the larger developments that we see in places like downtown development and downtown Silver Spring, in Down County. So they're the ones that, if they want additional density, they have to make the payment. So if you're doing a remodel, you wouldn't really be eligible for the program. So it's really just the larger developments that are making those payments. And it looks like we've put more stuff in the chat. All right. We've given you so much information. You are digesting it. So please feel free. You have my information. It's on the website. It's in the presentation. If you have other questions, again, the intent of these presentations is really just to sort of provide context as to how the recommendations are implemented. We spend a lot of time when we're doing master plans. We're talking about vision. We're talking about 20 years. We talk a little bit about sort of, the new parks we want, the park impact payment was unique to Bethesda. There was a recognition that, land prices and land development prices are very high in Bethesda. And so if we wanted new parks, we needed a new mechanism to provide funding. And so the master plan process will start to look at that. But then on the other side of master plan approval, there's a lot that needs to happen before. I mean, the buildings seem like they just shoot up out of the ground, like we ordered them from Amazon and they were delivered in 2 days. But it takes, it takes years for that to happen, for all the work to go into that. So if you have any questions, please reach out to me and we will get you answers. Okay, then as I mentioned before, both presentations are on the website now as PDFs. So the slides you can get right now. I think somebody put the plan website in the chat, and this recording will be up either later this week or early next week. Yeah. If there aren't any other questions, we appreciate you spending some time with us this evening, and we look forward to reconnecting with you in about a month and showing you what our initial thoughts are. All right. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Atara and team, thank you so much for all the coordination. Appreciate it. And I will see you on, some of you, I will see you on Saturday. Others I'll see next week. Thanks.